Welcome to the Sports Cypher, brought to you by Gas Sports Network. I'm your host with the most, Scruff Lion, a.k.a. Nick Valsalin, and I'm here at the Lions Den, ready to dive in some of the hottest sports topics right now. I have with me today one of my fellow Gas contributors, Bryce Tidwell, also co-host of the Restore and Rebuild podcast. How you doing today, Bryce?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me on.
Man, it's always a pleasure to have you on, man. I got a good set of things we're going to talk about, so I'm just going to dive right into it. We're going to talk about the NFL season so far. We're about 2 weeks in, and so far there's been some surprises. There's been some disappointments. I'm going to start off with surprises of the NFL season, and I can't not talk about this kid because he's been that good. I got to talk about Patrick Mahomes, and I got to talk about Tyreek Hill. Oh, my goodness. There's been a lot of hype around this kid in the offseason. And I knew he was going to be good, but I did not think he was going to be this good. In 2 games, he's thrown 10 touchdown passes. Both games, over 250 yards. Second game, 300-plus, and beat both the Steelers and the Chargers in the first opening 2 games. Man, what do you think about Patrick Mahomes so far this season?
Man, Patrick Mahomes, 2 weeks in, he looks like the real deal. Now, I never like to call somebody the real deal too soon, which is why I preface with 2 weeks in, because he's got to prove it over time. But right now, man, the guy looks for real. And from everything I've read about him, he's pretty much bred to be a pro athlete from day one. And in this first 2 weeks, it's definitely shown, man. He looks so composed. It doesn't look like it's getting to him at all. He's slinging tugs all over the place, and everybody's eating in Kansas City. It's a good time to be a Kansas City receiver, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Tyreek Hill has looked unstoppable, unguardable this season. Like, you know you're fast when you're flying down the field, and you make fast guys look slow. So, I mean, both games Tyreek Hill's been good.
Yeah,
He's
man.
been great.
I got him on like 3 fantasy teams, so shout out to the boy Reek.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looks like you got the memo early that he was going to be this good, but definitely looking like a stud so far this season. And Mahomes, what I love about him, he's gotten better with time. 55% completion percentage against the Chargers on 4 touchdowns, and then game 2 against the Steelers, 82% completion percentage with 6 TDs. The kid keeps getting better and better, so we'll see what he can come up with this week.
So, I mean, I guess this week that means he's got to go 95% and 10 touchdowns if I do my math correct, right?
I mean, based on the trajectory he's at right now, that's kind of where he's at. Kind of ridiculous if you ask me, but I mean, really can't tell with this kid. He might just do it. So, I mean, who's your surprise of the NFL season so far besides Patrick Mahomes, Bryce?
Well, man, I got a few, man. Off the bat, you got to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, this guy has definitely shocked the world coming out throwing for 400 back-to-back. Now, don't get me wrong. His career has proven that he's good for 3 unbelievable games in a season, and then usually he falls off. So we're going to see how long he can sustain this. But he's definitely surprised folks. And he's got whispers that Jameis might not be the starter going forward, which would be crazy when he comes back from suspension if he doesn't get that starting nod. But the way Fitzpatrick's playing, I guess you really can't deny him that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, 8 touchdowns in 2 games, 151 overall QBR, pretty much unheard of, Madden-like numbers. I mean, who knew that this guy had it in his career? I mean, it was his 13th season now. He drafted in 2005. I mean, I'm shocked to see this happen, but so far he looks pretty much unstoppable so far. And I got to throw Desean Jackson in that mix too. Pretty much looking like he's been, he's found the fountain of youth. Just when you thought he was going to fall off, he continued to, do what he does best and get those deep bombs. Got the win against the Eagles, his so-called revenge game that he's been revenging for pretty much feels like half of his entire career. But, nonetheless, he's doing great. One more name I'm going to throw out there, and he's close to home to you, Bryce. Adrian Peterson. First week looked like he had, rewinded the clock back to his Minnesota Vikings days. And then second week, not so much, but definitely intrigued by what I've seen with Adrian Peterson. What's your take on Peterson so far this season, Bryce?
Oh man, I like what I saw from preseason out of AP at first. So I expected good things. Game 1. He looked like he should look. But game 2, it seemed like it was some sort of mix-up between him and the blocking scheme. I'm not sure if it was him not being patient enough or if the blocks weren't developing properly, but something seemed a little off. Hopefully they'll be able to get back on track week 3. But AP, man, I like what he's shown. The question is how durable will he be able to be, and that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, the good thing with the Redskins running game, you do a pretty good job of getting Chris Thompson out there. He's always been a great change of pace, and he does a great job of, giving it a little bit of a different style running attack that, Peterson. It's a nice complementary, duo that you guys got over there. And then one last surprise I want to throw out there. Bryce, anybody completely off the radar that's kind of caught your attention so far this season?
Well, honestly, I got a couple guys, and if you take a look at the rushing leaders in the NFL right now, you're going to see some unfamiliar names and some names you definitely didn't expect. And I want to highlight 2 of those guys. First, you got Phillip Lindsey. You got an undrafted free agent coming out of Colorado, and this guy, man, this guy's doing numbers in Denver, and he's got speed, he's got breakaway speed, and the thing I like about him is he's got that one cut ability. He has a quick cut. I really like that about him. And then another guy is Matt Breida from the 49ers. The crazy thing about Matt Breida, this guy is averaging 8.4 yards a carry. Like, wow. Just think about that. 8.4 carry. Like, I mean, give this guy the ball some more, Kyle Shanahan. Let's get this guy some stats.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't really – he kind of got overlooked a little bit, filling in for Carlos Hyde. And then when you talk about Lindsey, we all expected Royce Freeman to be the guy that was going to be the go-to guy for them. And don't get me wrong, he's been involved, but seems like they've got a little bit of a thunder and lightning combination over there in Denver, and definitely looking like a nice little rushing attack moving into the season. And they're actually 2-0 so far this season, so one of the surprise teams also.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so piggybacking off the surprises of the season, I want to kind of bring it in, and, when people surprise, you also got those people that are going to disappoint you. So leading off with disappointments, I'd have to say my biggest disappointment of the season so far would have to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, wow, I haven't seen so much drama, so much problems around the locker room. I mean, I had them in as the favorite to win the AFC North easily. Right now, they're winless, tied the first game against the Cleveland Browns, lost the second one. They're without their star running back, Le'Veon Bell. Now, we've got issues with Antonio Brown. He's saying out here things that he wants to get traded. It just seems like a complete mess. Usually they get it together, but at 2 games so far this season, it's not too early to say, oh, it's over for them. But, I mean, they're going to have to turn it around very quickly.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, Pittsburgh's had trouble, like you highlighted from the beginning of the season, and now, like you said, more with Antonio Brown. I mean, the good thing is that they did tie, so at least they're 1-1, and hopefully for Pittsburgh fans, they get this win, and they could be sitting okay. It's tough when you're 0-1-1, but Pittsburgh holds itself to such a high standard. Excuse me. You would expect them to turn around, to get that ship turned around. And I've got faith. I've got faith in Mike Tomlin and Big Ben and that whole cast of guys. And with Le'Veon, I think, who will eventually come back by week 10. And they'll be able to turn it around. And we'll look back on this season like we do all the other Steelers seasons when it comes to a close and they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, they'll have a big test coming up. I believe that's Monday night. Pittsburgh will be on the road against the undefeated Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Should be a bit of a showdown, and we'll see what's real and what's not for sure by then. Bryce, what's some other disappointments you've had so far this season from, what we've seen in these 2 weeks of action?
Well, from these first 2 weeks, one of my biggest disappointments, based off talent level, has got to be the New York Giants. Don't get me wrong, I know their O-line isn't the best, but, I mean, you're talking about 3 big-time threats in my eyes. When you're talking about OBJ, who's a big-time proven vertical threat. You're talking about Evan Ingram, who at tight end, man, I was expecting this guy to come in his own. And now Saquon Barkley, the first pick overall, you don't take him without wanting to give him his necessary shine. And, yeah, I got to say that they disappointed me so far. We'll see. I think Eli Manning is what really, really decides the Giants' fate. And if Eli can show up and play well, the Giants will end up all right. But if they don't make a change at quarterback and they stay with Eli, things will get rough.
Yeah. I mean, he does. He is looking a little bit, not old, but just not looking like he's the right guy right now, not doing enough with those weapons. I'd definitely like to see more. Piggybacking off of that, one more team that's been a disappointment to me. I mean, they did the big trade of the season so far, trading Khalil Mack for those 2 first-rounders. But, man, I was expecting a little bit more of the Raiders. I had them, if you check up with the site, I had them close to a playoff team. I had them at around 8-8, 9-7 this season. I thought that Derek Carr, they 2 seasons ago, they were a fantastic team. I thought Derek Carr would kind of get it back together and show us what we saw that we loved in him when he made the Pro Bowl 2 years ago, under John Gruden. But offense hasn't looked good, and the defense has looked even worse. So definitely not liking what I'm seeing in Oakland so far. It doesn't seem like they have it together at all.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you on that. I mean, John Gruden pretty much got his job from being an analyst for the last, 7, 8 years. And, I mean, he hasn't really been around football. So you got to expect some sort of adjustment. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that right now. I mean, the adjustment smacking him in the face. They made the big move of getting rid of Khalil Mack. They thought they'd be okay without him. And, they're feeling that. They're feeling that impact. And then on the other side, Khalil Mack's dominating games in Chicago. So, John Gruden's he's got to lay in his bed because he made it himself. And they look like more of a rebuild than a ready right now, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is they do have 2 first-round picks, coming their way eventually. But, boy, this season, it definitely looks like they have some major holes on the defensive side of the football for sure. Anybody else that you want to point out as just big disappointments for you this season?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to go with the Seahawks. The Seahawks, you're looking at the Seahawks, they're 0-2. And, I mean, the fashion they've lost in has been uncharacteristic from a Seahawks team. We were talking about Russell Wilson. We're supposed to be looking at him as a top 10 quarterback, and he's just – some people got him top 5, and he hasn't shown it thus far. Khalil Mack single-handedly wrecked him, and I look at that as a big disappointment in Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, as good as a quarterback is only as good as its offensive line, and it's like you said, Khalil Mack pretty much had that man Russell Wilson running for his life all Monday Night Football the last time they played. And, he threw that big pick 6, which pretty much was, the clincher on the game. Yeah, I'm definitely a little disappointed with what I've seen with the Seahawks. They're looking like a rebuilding team for sure. But speaking of just kind of piggybacking off of that and transitioning into our next segment, we're talking about rebuilding teams, talking about surprise teams. I want to talk a little bit about a few teams that have coming out really hot out the gates. All these teams on by the list, they're all undefeated at this point in the season, but you have to wonder, 2 games in, is it for real? So I'm going to do a little section I like to call Contender or Pretender. So I'll name the team, and then we'll decide on, if they're for real, if they're contenders, or if they're just faking the funk and they're just pretenders early in the season. So first team I'm going to start off with, I want to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Started out really hot, 2-0 under Ryan Fitzpatrick. Who knows what's going to be the situation at quarterback? But so far in this season, I think they might be here to stay. In a tough division, they might end up being the second team. That's a 2 or 3 team playoff division, and I think the Buccaneers might be able to compete, especially with the strength of schedule. It beat the Saints in the first week, and then they beat the Super Bowl champion Eagles in week 2. Now, if they can finish that off week 3 with another win against the Pittsburgh Steelers, then you have to say that that's completely legitimate. I see them as a contender. What about you, Bryce?
I got to go with pretender for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is why. First off, I don't believe that Ryan Fitzpatrick will be able to hold this standard that he's played to. And this standard that he's played to has been the reason they've won these games in this fashion. Second of all, Jameis Winston's coming back, and that's guaranteed. That's guaranteed storylines. Whenever you get storylines, as the NFL has proven time and time again, negative storylines affect the locker room and affect play on the field. And Jameis Winston coming back, your number one pick, your prized possession at quarterback, coming back, trying to get it from a journeyman, that's a story that's going to be followed night in and night out. And that alone is probably going to affect the locker room. You already got guys talking about it, and he's not even back yet, which is the crazy thing about it. So I got to go with pretender for the Buccaneers. I don't see Ryan Fitzpatrick holding this standard for the rest of the season, and they have a tough schedule in the NFC South. So I got to go Contender.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that. I said the same thing about Ryan Fitzpatrick until he torched my favorite team on Sunday. But I don't know. Maybe he's the Case Keenum of this season. We'll see. Number 2 team on the list, the Miami Dolphins, surprise team, off to a 2-0 start. Not sure anyone really expected this. Bryce, what do you think about the Dolphins so far?
Okay, so this is my outlandish pick because I think the Dolphins are for real. And listen why. Because one, first of all, they seem to patch up that offensive line, and Ryan Tannehill is finally getting the protection he needs. He's not getting crushed every play anymore. And one thing about Ryan Tannehill, when he was at his best, he was really, really good when he had his run before injuries. And if he get back to that form with Frank Gore now, Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake, that's a solid and valid 1-2 punch at running back. Frank Gore is like he still hasn't lost a step, which is ridiculous. But I can see the Dolphins making some noise. We'll see how the season unfolds, but I like the Dolphins.
All right, I respect that, but I'm going to have to go Pretender on the Dolphins. I just don't see it. I look at this roster top to bottom, and, I guess there's opportunity for unknown guys to prove themselves to an extent, but I never really saw Ryan Tannehill as anything more than a mediocre quarterback. So I'm just going to have to go Pretender. I just don't see a Ryan Tannehill-led team being a legitimate playoff team at all. But that's just me.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you for sure. But don't forget, that AFC South, man. You never know. The Jaguars are tough, but you don't know how many wins they'll put up this season. You never know with that AFC South.
I mean, they also are undefeated. I left them off the list because I think naturally it's pretty fair to assume that the Jaguars are a contender. But, I mean, if the Dolphins can make themselves –
that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, the Dolphins might be able to make a case for themselves, but it remains to be seen. 2 weeks in, they look great. Third team I'm going to mention here, the Cincinnati Bengals, off to a 2-0 start. Definitely helps that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not, winning right now. But 2-0 start, they're off to a head start in the division. The other two teams 1-1, something along those lines, 1-0-1, whatever. But yeah, the Bengals looking pretty good so far. I'm gonna have to say they also are a pretender. I don't see them legitimately being able to win this. If they do win the division, I don't see them making any noise in the playoffs. So let's say that. Maybe a playoff team at best. I could see them winning 9 games, maybe 10 if they continue this way. But I don't see them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender or anything of that sort.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that, Frank. I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender, but I can see them even winning that division, especially like you said, considering the Steelers. You got the Ravens. They look like 2 totally different teams through 2 weeks. And, the Browns, what are we really expecting from them? So I can legitimately see the Bengals making the playoffs and making a slight push, but Super Bowl contender would be a stretch. Now, if that Andy Dalton, A.J. Green connection gets to where it once was with Joe Mixon, I don't know. Joe Mixon's he's a very good running back. You never know. Never say never. But right now, I'd have to agree with you.
All right, great, man. And 2 more teams left on this list. This next team, I'd have to say, out of all the teams on this list, I'm the highest up on this team right here, and I think they are a bona fide Super Bowl contender, and that team is the Kansas City Chiefs. 2-0 so far this season. They beat the L.A. Chargers, who I thought were going to be the favorite to win the AFC West, and then they've also beaten the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I also thought, a playoff team for sure. So 2 wins early in the season. Patrick Mahomes looked great. We've yet to see any type of drop-off in his play. I'm sure there will be a point in the season where we do. But so far, I'm seeing that Kansas City's got a high-powered offense, and not only are they good, but I could see them being good for years to come. And I'm probably going to go out on a little bit of a limb this right here. This is going to be a big hot take moment, but, with Patrick Mahomes at the helm and Andy Reid calling the plays and Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt, young core right there, give them maybe 5 years. I don't see next 5 years, there's a good chance they're going to win a Super Bowl, if not sooner.
Yeah, the way they've looked through 2 weeks has been pretty spectacular. I could definitely see that happening in 5 years. This year, are they a contender for the Super Bowl is a great question because through 2 weeks they definitely look like it. But will the inexperience of their quarterback ever show face? That's the question that still hasn't been answered, and that's the question that can only be answered as the season continues.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Everything's all good until you hit the playoffs. Man, speaking of the playoffs, another team that I got on this list, playoff team a few years ago, but they've definitely fallen from grace, at least on the defensive end, and struggled to find their identity on offense. But they pulled out 2 close games. Denver Broncos on the list. Bryce, contender or pretender?
See, this is tough because when you're talking about the Broncos, you're talking about a team with one of the best defensive players who, like Khalil Mack in this past week, can change an entire game with his presence alone. That's Von Miller. Case Keenum's coming in, and he's using those receivers. Those receivers have looked bad for some time now, but Case Keenum's showing that it wasn't the receivers' fault. They lacked the quarterback to get him the ball. It's tough. It's tough. Am I going to go contender for Super Bowl? No. But playoff contender? I got to say yes.
Okay. All right. I respect that. Maybe wild card spot if they get lucky. I could see them winning maybe 7 to 9 games. It all really depends how good and how stout that defense will be. I'll definitely say they look good again on defense, and they have a lot of good players on that side of the ball. Case Keenum, he's been proving people wrong, and he looks a lot better this season than I thought he would. So I'm kind of lukewarm on them. I'm going to go pretender, but kind of on the same breath that you're on with that. They could be a potential playoff team. I don't see them winning that division. I think LA Chargers are going to come out that division. But, of course, we'll see, man. And as we kind of transition through the rest of the season, it's going to be good to keep our eyes on these teams, and let's see how they continue to develop. And I'm sure we'll be talking about them as the time goes on. So as we kind of continue on with the show, I just kind of want to wrap it up towards the end. I'm just focus on Week 3 now in the NFL. I got a couple games here that I want to keep an eye on for us, man, and we'll kind of weigh in on each of these games. First game that I see this weekend that looks like a real good, fun matchup, Saints at the Falcons. 2 NFC South teams that, both are high-powered offense, both, decent start so far, and, we both expected these teams to be playoff teams. Who do you think is going to have the edge in that matchup there?
Man, that's a tough matchup there. I would have to give the edge to the Saints just slightly. I just think what they've got going right now with Michael Thomas, Kamara, and Drew Brees, it's tough. It's going to be tough for anybody to stop. And I like what they've got. I really like what they've got. I'm going to go with the Saints on that game. How about you?
I like the Saints a lot too, but I'm going to go with the Falcons at home. I like them at home right now. They've had some disappointing games that they've lost, but I definitely like Matt Ryan to rebound, at home, get Julio Jones involved in the offense, get things back rolling, and that's a nice young defense. I could see them getting the edge, although I see it being a shootout either way. Now, speaking of shootouts, we got one going on out west, the Battle of L.A. I think this is going to be a good one. 2 teams that I see as potential playoff teams, and I wouldn't be shocked to see either of these teams make a run at it. You got to look at the Chargers, Phillip Rivers, lifelong great quarterback, just hasn't been able to make any noise in the playoffs. And then Jared Goff, the Rams, just a loaded team altogether. If I had to put my money on somebody, I'm taking the Rams. But Bryce, what you think about that LA matchup?
Oh man, I think I got my money on the Rams as well, man. They're just too tough right now, man. I can't. What they've got going, I'm still salty about Sean McVay leaving my skins because that guy's a prodigy, man. They've got the best play caller. Mark my words, they've got the best play caller in the NFL, best offensive play caller in Sean McVay. And he's getting guys open. He's making Jared Goff's job easier. And Todd Gurley is looking like he's coming for another MVP season. He wants that MVP award, and you got to hand it to those guys, man. I like what they've got going. Another thing I like about it is those guys are playing hard because those guys are getting paid, and they know if they work hard, they get paid. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, you got to reward your players that are, showing out for you, man. And Aaron Donald, shout out to him, one of the best players on the defensive side of the football. Finally got that big check, and much deserved on his side, much deserved. And he's got plenty of help along that front side with Ndamukong Suh out there. They've got one hell of a defense. Now, speaking of teams not paying their players, we've got a pretty good matchup here in the night game. Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay. I don't know about you. I'll take the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. I'm kind of going on a limb here. They may make me look bad, but I got Steelers against Tampa Bay. What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, I'm rolling with the Steelers as well. Like I said, I do think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are pretenders, and I think the Steelers get back on track, and they'll end this week 1-1-1.
Yeah, it'll even out pretty evenly. We'll see, man. But I just gotta wonder if they lose again. How much longer before you call Le'Veon Bell and say, hey, it's about that time. You pay him that money. What do you think, Bryce? Is he worth a big time contract for the Steelers, or do you see him not being a long term option for them at running back? What do you think about that?
Well, worth, in my opinion, their opinion is two different things for sure. Because I think he's worth it, but I see what the team sees from a business standpoint. The history with running backs is not the greatest when it comes to durability, and they don't think his value is where he feels it is. And the same token, I'm pretty sure Le'Veon will be back week 10 because if he doesn't come back week 10, he's not guaranteed. This year doesn't count as a league year against his contract. If he comes back by week 10, this still counts as a full year of him playing. So I think we'll see Le'Veon at some point this season. It just depends on when. And if I had to take my guess, I'd say we see him by week 10.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's good to know for fantasy owners. We were hoping to get him a little sooner. I got him in about 2 of my leagues, and I've definitely been hurting without the guy, man. Let's get that man back on the field as soon as possible. But, yeah, man, Bryce, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And, you're always dropping great content on the website, man. I appreciate you coming by, and this will be the first of many sports ciphers we'll be able to talk, and, we'll see how this season progresses, man. Thanks for coming on board.
Hey, man, thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to more and more conversations and seeing how this NFL season unfolds.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. All right, we'll continue on with the show, man. What we got coming up next, man, pretty much wrapping it up for the rest of the evening. Just trying to get everything together for you guys. We got more of these coming. Look for us every week to be dropping these on the regular. Thanks for listening to us today. Be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Good Ass Sports Network. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Good Ass Sports. And be sure to stay tuned to our website, goodassports.com. We are sports for the culture.